and I was on my bicycle, and I was making a turn to pass some cyclists. And as I made the turn to pass the cyclists, I got run over by a truck. And I broke 6 vertebrae in my spine, and I had bone fragments on my spinal cord. And the doctors, 4 experts, told me I would never walk again and I would be paralyzed. So in order for some people to wake up, they need a wake-up call. And that was my call. I decided against the surgery, a radical surgery where they take out the entire back part of my spine and screw in these rods. I decided against the surgery in 1986, and I thought, I'm not going anywhere, I'm not doing anything. Let's see if I can heal this with my mind. Now, nobody at this time had any idea that it was even possible. As a matter of fact, the doctors thought I hit my head on the ground and that I had a head injury, because nobody said no to them. But you know, when you're trying to create something like a miracle, you will always be considered a fool or insane, because nobody else is doing what you're doing. It's unconventional. It's outside the beliefs of a culture. But if you pull it off, you'll be considered a saint, a holy man, a genius, a mystic. And so I was willing to lose everything for a thought or an experience. And I went through a very dark night of the soul after my injury, because I wanted to heal myself, and I was impatient, I was angry, I was frustrated, I was unfocused, and I couldn't get my mind to do what I wanted it to do, which made me more angry. But every day, I had this thought in my head: the power that made the body heals the body. I kept hearing it in my head. The power that made the body heals the body. And so I thought, maybe I can take my attention off of everybody and everything and go within. And let me connect to this power, this intelligence, and begin to give it a plan, a template, a design. And for 6 weeks, I would start doing it every morning. And then I'd think about living in a wheelchair. And then I'd start all over again, and then I'd think, should I sell my house? Should I sell my practice? And I realized I was focusing on what I didn't want to have happen instead of what I did want to have happen. And that's what the hormones of stress do. They cause us to pick the worst thing in our future and emotionally embrace it and be prepared for it. Because anything less, there's a better chance of survival. And so for 6 weeks, I went through hell. Because I would start reconstructing my spine and I would lose my attention. But I never gave up. 3 hours every day going within. And at the end of 6 weeks, I was able to go through my entire internal process without losing my focus. Because I reasoned that this intelligence, this consciousness, had awareness. And awareness is paying attention. So it was paying attention to my thoughts. So just like you know when someone's paying attention to you, they're present with you. And so I had to reconstruct my spine, but when I lost my attention, I would have to stop and start all over again because it wasn't a clear design. And at the end of 6 weeks, I was able to go through the whole thing. And all of a sudden, my body started to change very quickly. My pain went away, my numbness changed, I started to get happy. And all of a sudden I started to notice that I was feeling better. And the moment I began to feel better, I was thinking about what I was doing, and now I did it with more passion and more conviction, more joy. In 10 weeks, I was back on my feet, and at 12 weeks, I was training again. And they came to put me in a body cast from my chin to my waist, And I put the cast on for 5 minutes, and I tossed it. And I just made a deal with myself in those lonely nights where I couldn't sleep. I talked to this intelligence every day, and I said to it, I'll make you a deal. If I'm ever able to walk again, I will spend the rest of my life studying the mind-body connection and studying mind over matter. And since 1986, that's what I've been doing. I started studying people with spontaneous remissions and what it took for them to get healed. I went back to school and got another degree. Then I started teaching people how to do it. And then I got approached by a man that created What the Bleep. And he asked me to be in the movie. But there were two questions that people asked after What the Bleep. Number one, how do you do it? That's a good question, huh? The second question is, if your personality creates your personal reality, and I have to change my personality to create a new personal reality, why the hell is it so hard to change? I thought that was a great question. And so we started teaching workshops and teaching people how to change. And in the beginning, we didn't see much change. And now, 10 years later, we are measuring people doing the uncommon. We are measuring people doing the miraculous, of healing themselves of diseases, of creating better lives for themselves. I just came from Los Cabos, and the miraculous was happening at that event. Common people like you are doing the uncommon, and you don't have to be a Buddhist monk. You don't have to be a nun with 40 years of devotion. You don't have to be an academic. You don't have to be a scholar. It's time that common people are privileged enough to do the uncommon. And we've measured people and made scientific history in the last 3 years that you will never see in any neuroscience journal. And they were just people just like you. And now when people ask me, is change possible? I have no doubt in my mind. In my last book, I said, hey, how can you give somebody a sugar pill or a salt injection? And a certain percentage of those people will accept, believe, and surrender to the thought that they're getting the real substance. And without any analysis, they begin to program their autonomic nervous system to make their own pharmacy of chemicals that matches the exact same chemical they think they're taking. Is it the inert substance that's doing the healing? Or is it the body's innate ability to heal? So the question is, do you need something outside of you to change you? Or if you understand how the placebo works, can you teach people to do it? But instead of putting their belief in something outside of them, put their belief in something inside of them, or a possibility, an unknown, and have them revisit that unknown until they make it known. Because if 81% of people who have depression, if 81% of the people who are in a depression study are healed by a placebo, 81% are healed by a placebo, it means they're making their own pharmacy of antidepressants. And they don't need anything to do it. And so it's time people take their power back. It's time that we wake up. And my passion is about transformation, but not with elite individuals, with common people. And if you keep understanding that you need a flu shot because there's bugs with your name out there that are looking for you, and if you don't get the flu shot, you're going to get sick, that's the nocebo. Then when you don't get it, you'll get sick, and then you'll need a pharmaceutical. That's programming. But when people break out of that illusion and they begin to take their power back, they're no longer controllable. And now, you're talking about a race of individuals now that are believing in themselves more than anything else. And that's where we're going as a community in this world.
Eh,
Hi, so a quick question. On our way to achieve our purpose, I am assuming that to make each goal a completement, planning might be a good tool. And if I am correct, do you have any advice on how to go about it?
Sure. So the question was about planning. Do you know that if you woke up in the morning and instead of getting out of bed, what do most people do when they wake up in the morning now? What do? Admit it. You go to your cell phone and you go, oh my gosh, Monica's eating carbohydrates again. Oh, look, my boyfriend from high school Facebooked me. Ooh. Oh, look, there's a war in Syria. Everybody goes through their device to plug them in. But what if you woke up in the morning and you said this? What is the greatest expression of myself that I can present to the world today? What if you said, I'm going to be defined by this vision. Let me become conscious of those unconscious thoughts. Let's become so conscious of those unconscious thoughts that they'll never slip by my awareness. You know, I can't, it's too hard, nobody loves me, I'm bad. So, old circuits from the past. What if you said, no more complaining, no more feeling sorry for myself, no more judging anybody, I'm going to stop that. What if you said, I'm not going to be guilty anymore, I'm done. I'm not going to be unworthy. Those are the emotions, behaviors, and thoughts that are connected to the old self. The word meditation literally means to become familiar with. That's what it means. If you're becoming familiar with your unconscious thoughts and making them conscious, you're meditating. To know thyself. If you become aware of your automatic habits and you're so conscious of your unconscious behaviors that you never go unconscious again, you're changing. If you're familiar with your emotions and say, that's my past, those are chemicals from the past, let's leave them behind. And then you said, who do I want to be when I open my eyes? What thoughts do I want to think? What thoughts do I want to fire and wire in my brain? Let me plan my behaviors today. Do you know the very action of planning your behaviors in your mind, rehearsing what you're going to do? Do you know that mental rehearsal actually installs the circuits in your brain to look like the experience has already occurred? Now your brain is no longer living in the past, it's primed for the future. And if nerve cells that fire together wire together, you keep doing that, it's going to become familiar to you. And so then, here's the tough part. Not for Mexicans, though. If you said, I am not going to get up from this meditation until I am in love with life. I'm going to leave my sadness and pain behind, and I'm going to open my heart, and I'm going to feel gratitude. I'm going to feel joy. I'm going to feel inspiration. Do you know that the moment you start creating those chemicals, you are signaling new genes ahead of the experience? And now, if you can combine a clear intention with an elevated emotion, you are literally biologically changed. And if you can get up from your meditation feeling like somebody else, your job is to maintain that modified state of mind and body your entire day. Because if you keep cultivating that elevated emotion, it's going to become familiar to you. And if you're able to maintain that modified state of mind and body every single day, get ready. Because something unusual is going to happen in your life. It's the law. You are going to run into a new opportunity because you're in a new state of being. And that's what we teach people. To rehearse the future and to take the brain out of the past and put it in the future. Take the body out of the past and put it in the future. But if you get up every single day feeling the same way, and you wake up and you go, oh my God, who's that? Oh, God. Wait, let me remember my problems. Ugh. You just return back to the old self. So the act of planning your behaviors, the research shows that as you begin to plan what you're going to do and how you're going to do it, you begin to change your brain to look like the event has already occurred. And you begin to prime your brain into the future and out of the past. And if you can create the emotion, you are more prone to get your behaviors to match your intentions, your actions equal to your thoughts, and your mind and body working together. And you will begin to arrive at a new destiny. We've seen it over and over and over again. Last question. One more? What time? Last question, okay?
Buenas noches.
¿Dónde estás? Oh, hi.
Okay. Es un honor el que yo pueda estar aquí. Yo vi su video hace unos meses de ¿Y tú qué sabes?
Sí.
Y
Ready.
creo que me estoy generando esto, el conocerlo. Yo quiero saber cómo puedo hacer un paso cuántico, cómo puedo hacer mi paso cuántico.
How to make the quantum leap. And you want me to answer that in 2 minutes or 3? Look,
No.
what is the simple definition of quantum? Quantum physics says that your mind and matter are so intimately connected that it's impossible to separate the two. That matter has a mind, and mind is in matter. And you can't pull them apart. And so, Newtonian physics, the world we live in, is the physics of the predictable. Okay, we're going to shoot a rocket to the moon. We need to know the distance, we need to know the speed, and because we can figure out all of those elements, we could say that Newtonian physics, we can predict where we're going. We can predict how much time it takes. But the quantum model of reality is about the unpredictable. It's about this place of uncertainty. And so in quantum physics, it's amazing because when they started studying the very tiny particles in atoms, like electrons and photons, they expected that those particles would behave like planets rotating around the sun, predictably, but they don't. They respond to mind. And so now, all of a sudden, the quantum physicist comes along to measure the electron. And the electron goes from a wave of possibility, and all that energy collapses into a particle, and it's called collapsing the wave function. They turn their back and no longer look and observe the electron, and it turns back into energy. So mind is affecting matter. So, I have drank martinis with quantum physicists till sunrise, hundreds of times. And they always say, well, the observer effect works really well for the tiny, small subatomic particles, but not for the very large. And I always say the same thing to them. Yeah, the observer does work for the very tiny and not for the very large. But what if we're poor observers? What if we can get better at observation? In other words, if you wake up every morning and you do the same thing that you've been doing for the last 10 years, then you're caught in the predictable world of Newtonian physics. And if you're doing the same thing over and over again, we can take your past and lift it up and set it on your future, and it's going to be exactly the same. So then if you're viewing your life from the same level of mind every single day, then you are collapsing the same possibilities into the same reality. So if you teach people then to find the present moment, in quantum physics, all possibilities exist in the present moment. But most people's brains are anticipating the future based on the past and they're not present. So then it requires training. It requires people retreating from their lives and practicing finding the present moment and beginning to change their habits and their thoughts and their behaviors. However, when you live by the hormones of stress, most people don't know this, but there's an invisible field of energy around your body. And when you react to someone or something, you draw from this invisible field and you turn it into chemistry. And the field around your body shrinks. How do I know? I measured it. And now you're more matter and less energy. You're more particle and less wave. And most people then, when you are matter trying to change matter, you always try to force the outcome. You try to control the outcome. You try to predict the outcome. And people then get competitive, or they hold on, or they manipulate, or they cheat, or they steal, because that's the only way they can get what they want. But the quantum model of reality, when you are truly in the present moment, and we've measured this in brain scan after brain scan, you forget that you're a woman. You forget your name. You forget your age. You forget your culture. You forget your past. You forget your future. If you forget that you have a body, you forget that you have parents. When you're truly in the present moment, you go from putting your attention on your body, your environment, and time, to becoming nobody. No one, no thing, nowhere, in no time. You become a thought, alone, in possibility. And if you are going to heal your body by thought alone, or change something in your life by thought alone, then you have to become thought alone. And teaching people how to linger in this place of the unknown is what begins to change their energy. We also measured when a person begins to open their heart and they can begin to sustain an elevated emotion. They begin to broaden the magnetic field around their body to 9 meters wide. Now they're more energy than matter. They're more wave than particle. And they can exert better effects on reality. So then think of, when you open your heart, this is science, like dropping a pebble in water. You produce a ripple. If you drop a bigger stone, you produce a bigger ripple. If you're able to sustain that state, you keep dropping the same rock over and over again, and you broadcast a signature into the field. The emotion is the magnetic charge. Your intention, your thought, is the information that's carried on that wave. And when you combine a clear intention with an elevated emotion, you begin to produce an effect on matter. They did an experiment. They took a group of people that were expert prayers and healers. And they took 3 vials of DNA and they set them in front of them. And they said to these people, we want you with your mind, with your intention, to see this DNA wind or unwind. And keep doing it over and over again with your mind. Close their eyes, just visualizing it, winding and unwinding, winding and unwinding. At the end of the experiment, they checked the DNA. Guess what happened? Nada. Nunca. Nothing. Nunca. Nothing changed. So then they said to these people, okay, now open your heart and feel gratitude, loving kindness. Create a feeling of goodwill and just generate this feeling into the field. And we want to see if it changes the DNA. Over and over again, they kept creating this loving feeling. Check the DNA. Niente. Nothing. The elevated emotion did nothing to change the DNA. It had no effect on matter. But when they said to those people, We want you to see the DNA unwinding in your mind. That's intention. Intention is getting clear on what you want. And we want you to give thanks ahead of the actual experience, as if the DNA unwound. 25% of the DNA unwound at a remote location. You see, the thoughts that you think are the electrical charge in the quantum field. The feelings that you emote are the magnetic charge in the quantum field. And how you think and how you feel broadcasts an electromagnetic signature that influences every single atom in your life. The thought sends the signal out, and the feeling draws the event back. So if you're walking around your life feeling sorry for yourself and feeling like a victim, you are broadcasting that signature into the field. And you will create more experiences to suffer, because we are not punished for our sins. We are punished by our sins. And sin is an attitude. And sin is how you think and how you feel. So then when you cause people to give up their guilt and their shame and their unworthiness and teach them how to open their heart and create coherent waves in their brain and in their heart, they are going to produce the miraculous. So to answer your question, it takes training, and it takes practice, and it takes learning new information and deprogramming ourselves into believing that we're limited. And I just came from Los Cabos with 500 people, and the miraculous was happening all around. Why? Because just like people believe that an infection can produce a disease amongst the community, I believe that wellness is as infectious as disease. And you get a group of people together that truly want to do this. We measure the energy of the room in every one of our events. And you know what? In Los Cabos, we made history. We had never gotten measurements like that ever. Because people, when they open their heart, they're adding to the field. They're producing an energy that people can begin to interact with. But if you're living by the hormones of stress and you have no energy, no field, then you can't produce an effect on matter. So then, life is about the management of energy. And where you place your attention is where you place your energy. And if your attention is on the knowns and in the predictable future, or your attention is on the familiar emotions of the past, you are siphoning energy out of the present moment, and you have no energy to create with. Getting people beyond their identity, getting people beyond their past, getting people beyond predicting their future, getting people beyond their faces or their wardrobes or their sports cars or their importance, getting beyond all those things is when they begin to make contact with the quantum field. You can't enter the quantum field as a somebody. You have to enter as a nobody. And when you're able to do this and practice it really well, you will begin to do what's innately your birthright, and that is to create an unknown or wonderful experience in your life. So it just takes practice in order to do it. And I'm happy to say that in the last event we just had, I just came from Los Cabos, amazing miracles and amazing stories.